Something exciting is happening. Many Jews today feel the need for a revitalized Judaism. People are searching for a more vital and authentic mode of Jewish expression, and more than ever we need to shift, not only physically, but spiritually out of exile mode. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
From when is it ideal to daven in the morning?
The ideal time for davening, and by davening I'm assuming we mean all of Tefillat Shacharith, that is to say, the essential parts of Shacharith are Kriyat Shema with the Brachot and Shmoneh Esrei of Shacharith. The ideal time is to start a short time before the Netzach Hama, before sunrise, so that one reads Kriyat Shema with the attendant Brachot shortly before sunrise, shall we say, starting approximately 6 or 7 minutes before the sun rises. As the Rambam writes, that it takes about 1/10 of an hour to say Kriyat Shema with the Brachot, and then, having said that, one immediately stands up and begins the Shmoneh Esrei, the Tefillah, with the sunrise, at the time of the sunrise. This is called Tefillah Kawathikin, and this is the ideal time for davening Shacharith. That is therefore number one, the ideal and lechatchilat time. If a person cannot daven at that time, but only later, it is possible to say Kriyat Shema, according to the Mishnah, till the end of the third hour of the day, which refers to the first quarter of the day being defined as from sunrise to sunset. That is what the Mishnah states. Today it could be that there's room to claim that one can read Kriyat Shema even later than that time. But that's a separate discussion. And one can say the Tefillah also for a number of hours after the sun rises, until at least the end of the fourth hour, and at the end of the first third of the day. But the Avad, and according to the Talmud Yerushalmi, even the Chatchila, one could say Tefillat Shacharit even till midday, till Hasot Hayom. That is with regards to the two usual times for davening Shacharit, that is to say, either before sunrise or after sunrise.
If it is not possible to daven at the time just described, how early can one daven in the morning?
If a person has to leave home very early for all kinds of reasons, it might be for reasons of going to work on a particular day very early, or making a flight perhaps, going somewhere, or a soldier who has to return to the army, or any such reason, or it could be a soldier on active duty. There are many reasons why a person might have to daven very early. The question therefore becomes, how early can one daven in the morning? With regards to this, we have a sugya, we have a discussion in the Talmud Bavli, in the Masechet Berachot, Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, where it says as follows, that Abu Shmuel and Lewi, two of the great Chachamim, the first generation of the Amoraim, when they had to leave early on a trip, go somewhere, they would get up early, after dawn, after first light, which is about an hour and a quarter before sunrise here in Eretz Yisrael on an average day. They would say the Shmoneh Esrei, just the Tefillah, and then they would begin their journey. And later, when there was more light outside, Mishi Akir ben et Haviro berihuk arba amot, when they could recognize a person they know somewhat at a distance of 4 amot, of about 2 meters, which is approximately about 50 minutes before the sun rises here in Eretz Yisrael. At that time they would say Kriyat Shema with the Brachot. In other words, they would not be Somech Gura Tefillah, they would not juxtapose Kriyat Shema and then Tefillah. On such a day, on such an occasion, they would drop that particular Miswa Min HaMuvhar, that possible and desirable course of action, but it's not always possible, and they would therefore daven first, because the Tefillah of Shacharith, the actual Shmoneh Esrei, may be said where there is need to say it earlier than usual. It may be said from Alot HaShachar, from dawn, from the very beginning of the day. The beginning of the day, at least for some many purposes in halacha is from dawn, from alot hashachar, which is, as we say, about 1¼ hours before sunrise. And therefore all the Rishonim state that it is obvious and it is plain, even though the Talmud does not state so exactly in so many words, but it is implied in the discussion that we just mentioned with regards to the father of Shmuel and Levi, who would do something along these lines when they left on a journey very early in the day. All of the Rishonim say that it is possible to daven the Shmoneh Esrei of Shacharith from dawn. So that is certainly possible according to all authorities. The question is it correct to say Kriyat Shema with the brachot before saying Tefillat Shacharith, the Shmoneh Esrei, after dawn, after Alot HaShachar, or is it more correct to wait and put Kriyat Shema off till later? This is a mahaloka. There is a discussion, a disagreement amongst the Rishonim on this question. Many Rishonim hold, based on that discussion we just mentioned in Brachot Daf Lamed, about the Shmuel and Levi, that a person should say the Tefillah only after Alot HaShachar and then leave on one's journey, or go off and do what one has to do at that time. And Kriyat Shema will be said at some later point when there is more light outside. It can also be said just before sunrise or after sunrise, depending on the situation. And that is the clear implication of that Gemara over there. However, we also have another statement on Daf Het Amud Bet and Masechet Barachot. We have a Baraita where Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says that a person sometimes may read Kriyat Shema, Shel Shacharith, the morning Kriyat Shema, immediately after Alot HaShachar, and is Yotzei Le'Chovah, and fulfills his obligation. And the Rif and the Rambam say that one may do so when one is mashkim laseth laderech. In other words, when one must get up early and leave on a trip and one has no time to wait, etc. Then a good example would be having to catch a flight in the morning, having to leave the house early. In such a situation, the Rif and the Rambam are of the view that one can say Kriyat Shema with the brachot immediately after Alot HaShachar, and then say the Shmoneh Esrei, and then leave. So the truth is, it's difficult to adjudicate between these two opinions. Either course of action seems reasonable. One can either say Kriyat Shema and then Tefillah after Alot HaShachar, Kriyat Shema and Tefillah both after Alot HaShachar, or one can say just the Tefillah and say Kriyat Shema at some point later in the day. With regards to a person catching a flight, for example, it's also possible to delay everything until one is actually on the plane, and to daven sitting down. I recommend when one is on a plane to daven sitting down rather than standing up, and say all of Kriyat Shema with the brachot and Shmoneh Esrei sitting in one seat. This is also definitely a possibility.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.